If you want to have the best possible day, then you need to get started in the best possible way. And that means setting yourself up for success the minute your eyes open with an effective morning ritual and morning routine. And that's why in this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you 10 successful entrepreneurs and business people's morning routines so that you can model and emulate and take from them what you will in order to give yourself the best start to your day. All right, let's get to it. The reason that morning rituals and morning routines are such a popular topic really should come as no surprise. After all, morning really does set the tone for the entire day, and the attitude and the practices and the rituals that you go through when you first sort of wake up and get started, well, they're going to set the tone, and they're either going to lead you down the path of success or down the path of stagnation or failure. And this is why it's so incredibly important that you get this stuff right. There's another benefit to getting this right, or another drawback to getting it wrong, in that in the morning, your mind is primed to accept cues and accept information and accept inputs with very little kickback and very little resistance. Meaning that if you fuel your brain and your mind with really high quality information and really effective rituals and really success promoting activities, well, you're going to be significantly really primed and set up for success so that everything else that you do in the day becomes that much easier and that much more effective. The danger here is that the flip side is also true. So any negative information that you feed yourself, any negative self-talk, any bad information, which is why watching the news or listening to the news is such a horrible thing to do first thing in the morning, well, any of this stuff is also going to severely impede your rates of success or your mood or your attitudes or your thoughts, or all of this is going to influence your behaviors and really not give you the likelihood and the chance of success that you know you're capable of and that you would be able to achieve if you'd have just set yourself up right with an effective morning ritual. So if listening to the news is bad, or if reading the news, or if allowing negative self-talk and bad thoughts and bad attitudes, well, if those are all the bad things, well, what are the good things that you can do to set yourself up? That's what this episode is about. So with all that said, I've got 10 effective morning rituals from 10 top entrepreneurs and business people to share with you, and we'll dive right in with number 1, Hal Elrod. All right, so Hal Elrod is the author of The Miracle Morning, which is one of the more popular books on morning rituals. He basically took a lot of the effective routines that people have been doing for decades, for centuries, for millennia maybe even, and distilled them down into a few key concepts. So I'm going to cover those in just a second, but what's important to notice is that as we go through these different routines, as you learn about different strategies and different tactics and different times that people wake up and so on, it's important to know that there's going to be a lot of commonalities and a lot of kind of underlying themes and tones here. And this is a good thing because it's going to prove that some things are going to be more effective and some things are going to be more, deliver better results, even if they sound painful. Because I promise you, as we go through some of these, especially if you've not done them before, some of them are going to seem a little uncomfortable, certainly not a lot of fun. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's dive into Hal Elrod's method, which is essentially the SAVERS. All right, so let's see how my memory plays out here. Now, SAVERS is an acronym, SAVERS, and it stands for silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. I think I got that right. All of those are relatively self-explanatory, so just a real quick high-level overview on each of them. Silence means some kind of meditation or silent practice in order to calm your mind and calm your thoughts. Affirmations, we've all heard of affirmations. These are things like, I'm strong and I'm confident and I'm powerful, and they seem kind of cheesy at first, but they can have a positive effect if you're the type of person that works well with them. Personally, I've never gotten the best results from affirmations. Even if I've said things that I believe are true or want to be true, they've always felt a little tricky for me, but if they work for you, fantastic. V is all about visualization. This is the classic vision board type stuff where you really represent your goals visually, you walk through them, you try to imagine them in the most detailed view possible. Some great content on this has been written over the years, including the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Haven't read that one, highly recommend checking it out as well. After V, we have E, which is exercise. This is going to be a theme and a tone that comes up again and again and again, so I'm not going to beat the point up here. Just know you got to get that body moving. After the E, we have R, which stands for reading. I am a massive massive fan and advocate of ongoing learning, and reading is definitely a part of that, as we're going to cover when we talk about my morning ritual closer to the end of this video. Just make sure that you're taking in some high quality knowledge. And then lastly is the final S, which is scribing. And this is just a nice way of making sure that the acronym works. And scribing stands for journaling, which is essentially just writing down your thoughts and your ideas and your goals and getting all of the stuff that's going on in your head out of your head and onto a piece of paper. Fantastic for finding clarity, finding what you really think, what you really feel, and also putting some kind of concrete actionable steps to what you're going to be able to achieve next. Now, the takeaway point from this whole system is essentially that you can do a whole lot in just a little bit of time. If you read the book, The Miracle Morning, if you follow Hal Elrod's suggestions, he's not saying that each one of these needs to take an hour, which would chew up essentially most of your day, if not most of your morning. Rather, you can allocate just 5 minutes here, 20 minutes there, maybe 10 minutes there, and you can cram a whole lot into a little bit of time. The key is to find something that works for you. All right, the next morning ritual that I want to highlight for you is going to take us back quite some time to the days of Benjamin Franklin. He was one of the first people to really document that productivity mindset, that high level of accomplishment, and he asked a question every single morning, which was, what good shall I do today? And then he had a similar question at the end of the day, which is, what good did I do during the day? So it's important for accountability, but also to really prime your mind to make sure that you're doing things that actually matter to yourself and for others and for everyone that you serve. What I found most interesting, however, when studying Benjamin Franklin's routines was the fact that he really did keep a pretty tight ship here. He ran a really tight schedule, and essentially from 4 a.m. when he first woke up till 8 a.m. was a combination of different personal items, whether it was just wake up and eat and bathe and get dressed and get ready and things like that. Then from 8 until noon, it was work. Then he took a quick lunch break and then he worked again, and so on and so forth. But the point is that he did have a schedule and he did stick with it, and he definitely preached and advocated on the value of being intentional, being accountable, and setting that schedule and sticking to it. Which is the biggest takeaway that I got from studying Benjamin Franklin's routine, which is you do need to set a schedule and stick to it. Now, obviously, we're going to be covering a whole bunch of different rituals. Some things are going to resonate with you, some are not. My strongest advice is to find the things that resonate, that sound good, that sound like they would provide value to you, that you would be able to embrace and be consistent with, and adopt those. And then all of the things that sound crazy or ineffective or just not for you, well, you can definitely discard them at this point. Just keep in mind that some of these things are there for a very good reason. Exercise. So regardless, you're going to probably want to include some aspect of that into your routine, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's move on to the next person. On the topic of exercise, let's move on to the next routine, which is Jacko Willink. Runs a fantastic podcast, has all sorts of fantastic information, former Navy SEAL, and just a wonderful, wonderful role model on the topics of leadership and essentially doing really hard things. So Jacko's routine is all about waking up early and getting that exercise in. He's famous for waking up at 4:30 a.m., then he takes a picture and documents it for accountability and for inspiration for others that follow him as well. So Jacko's routine here is a little bit more simple, but again, wake up 4:30 a.m., then get a hard workout in, then shower, and get to work. So it's simple, it's straightforward, it's not overly complicated, and yet it's effective. And over time, by waking up early, by putting in those reps at the gym, and also mentally by forcing yourself to wake up early, you become a stronger and more dedicated and more capable person. So my takeaway point from Jacko is wake up early and get moving. All right, so that leads me perfectly to my next person, Dwayne Johnson, and this is fitting because we're on the topic of waking up early and getting some kind of movement in, which we're going to cover in the next person as well. But for now, just know that Dwayne Johnson wake up at 4 a.m., get some cardio in at 4:30 a.m., then have breakfast, then head back to the gym for a strength session. I heard Dwayne say that this whole process, all of the working out in a day, typically takes an hour 45 minutes, which to the average person seems like an absolute ton of time. But when you consider that your entire physique, your entire celebrity, your entire persona is based around how you look and the impressive physique that you've got, this is actually a pretty small amount of time to be spending in your entire day towards these goals. But it is an incredibly important part, so you want to make sure that you're getting it done right away. And that's why my takeaway point here is do what's important first. And while we're on the topic of waking up at 4 a.m., let's talk about our next person, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who wakes up at 4 a.m., does a little bit of reading, he then tends to bike to the gym, he does his workout fasted, he then bikes home, and then has breakfast. And that is pretty much the morning. At least the early morning. And what's really interesting here again is all of the emphasis and all of the priority that these people are putting on exercise, on physical fitness, on getting the body moving. There's been a ton of studies done on the impacts of exercise on the brain and BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factor, I do believe, but essentially your ability to think clearer and have more executive decision capabilities and essentially just be smarter and be sharper. So whether your goal is to live longer or to look better or to think sharper and think clearer, exercise is kind of the magic drug here. So my takeaway point with Arnold Schwarzenegger is kind of similar to some of the others, but it's get up and get moving. So it wouldn't be fair to talk about entrepreneurship and business people without talking about one of the most successful entrepreneurs of all times, Sir Richard Branson, and his morning ritual for what he does when he wakes up in the morning. What's interesting about all these routines is probably how I like Richard Branson's the most. It's also most interesting that he is one of the most successful and most accomplished entrepreneurs on the list. And even with a massive empire to run, he's still prioritizing the things that we're going to cover in just a second here and still making them a part of his daily ritual and daily routine. So what exactly does that look like? Well, the very first thing is obviously to wake up early. I don't have an exact time on this one, but early is going to mean different things to different people. For the context here, we're going to say it's probably around that 5, 6, 4 a.m. kind of mark. After that, it's a hard game of tennis where you can only imagine is a really aggressive game. And then following that is some kind of kite surfing if the weather permits. As someone who's kite surfed for years, I can't say enough just how amazing it would be to start my day with kite surfing. But seeing as I spend most of my time on the far west coast of Canada, the best time to kite surf is actually in the middle of winter when the storms are ripping off the ocean and it is freezing. So I do not do it very much. Plus, the other downside of being in Canada on the west coast during the winter is that it's really, really dark at 5 in the morning and 6 in the morning, even 7 in the morning. Anyway, I digress. After kite surfing, he then has a healthy breakfast, which again is going to mean different things to different people, but you probably have a general idea of what a healthy breakfast looks like, and it's probably not some kind of sugary cereal or Pop-Tarts or anything like that, but a mix of protein and fats and healthy carbs like fruits or veggies, and you know what to do. My takeaway point from Sir Richard Branson is that even the most successful people in the world still prioritize what's important, which is healthy food, exercise, and a little bit of fun. All right, so now that we've covered a whole bunch of early risers and some very similar routines with waking up early, getting in that exercise, maybe doing some reading, definitely getting some kind of healthy food in, let's take a look at a very successful, I don't want to say entrepreneur or business person, but certainly an effective leader from years gone by, and he took a completely opposite approach, yet still accomplished some amazing things, and that is Sir Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill is famous for starting the day working from bed. So typically he would wake up around 7:30 a.m. and then he would read the paper and drink his coffee and go through his mail and do everything that he needed to do while still in bed right up until around 11 a.m. This sounds crazy, right? Especially when you're comparing it to everyone else that we've studied and everyone else that we've talked about and all of the other high performers' routines. But this just goes to show that not everything is going to work for everyone. And a lot of the things that I'm sharing with you here may or may not work for you. And that's okay. What's really important is that you find the best ritual and the best routine that works for you, and you make sure to actually give it a fair shot. So set that schedule, set that routine, put it to practice, see how you feel, see how much more productive or unproductive you become, and then modify or tweak it as necessary. That's why my takeaway point from Sir Winston Churchill is do what works for you. All right, the next entrepreneur that I want to cover is Steve Jobs. Now, I don't want to take a look at his morning routine and what time he woke up or what time he ate or anything like that. I think we've covered enough there for you to get a good feel for what other people are doing. Rather, he asked himself a very important question each and every single morning when he looked in the mirror that guided the direction of his business and of his life and of the choices that he made. Now, granted, some of his personal choices and attitudes and behaviors, they've come into question in the last few years. That's not really what this is about, however. It's rather about the level of success and accomplishment that he was able to achieve by asking this question, and that's why I think it's just so incredibly powerful. Here's the question. If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And here's the kicker, or the key point. Whenever the answer is no, for too many days in a row, he knew that he needed to change something, somehow, or in some aspect of his life. This is important because not only does it highlight and reflect on the importance of really planning out your day and really looking ahead at what you're about to do and is it important, but also is it in alignment with where you want to go, with what your goals are, with what you are trying to achieve, and making sure that you're constantly moving in the right direction. It's way too easy to get overwhelmed and overloaded with the day-to-day tasks and to forget about that bigger picture, that bigger why that really guides you and is really driving and pulling you forward. So an important question to ask. I don't know if you have to do it every single morning, but it's definitely a good one to put onto your ritual. So my takeaway point from Steve Jobs is to be accountable to your life and what you're doing. All right, so let's move on to the next entrepreneur and author here, and we're talking about Tim Ferris. Tim's got an amazing amount of content behind him, so if you've never heard of him before, be a little shocked, but a quick Google search will unveil all sorts of valuable information, and he continues to put out new content through his podcast that enables you to sort of find the hacks and find the tricks and find the tweaks to optimize your life. So it was definitely worthwhile and interesting to pour into his morning ritual to see what I could take away from it. The big thing that I took away from Tim's morning ritual is the flexible nature of it. So sure, there's some things that he tends to do most mornings, and I'll cover those in just a second, but he also made sure to note that he was flexible with it. So it would vary. Some days, certain things would be done. Other days, other things would be done. They could get kind of mismatched and put around, and they could vary depending on if he was traveling or at home or all sorts of different variables. Typically though, upon waking up, he would make his bed, then he would have some kind of strong tea, then he would meditate for around 20 minutes and do some kind of journaling. There would also be some kind of exercise in there, and it could vary anywhere from 20 to 90 minutes, as well as a small breakfast, and he's famous for his slow carb, which is some kind of slower digesting carbs and mix of protein and so on. What's interesting here is that it incorporates a lot of the things that we've looked at from other entrepreneurs and other business people, and a lot of the elements that we talked about very first with Hal Elrod's Savers routine, being let's see if I can remember again, the silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. Again, you don't need to do all of these, but if you can include them in some way, shape, or form, and certainly the ones that work best for you, you'll probably get some pretty decent results. But again, track it and test it for yourself. So my takeaway point from Tim Ferris is to stay flexible and do what you can when you can. All right, so the time has come for me to share my morning ritual, my morning routine, and one that I've stuck to pretty much without fail for the better part of the last decade, and certainly some aspect of it for a lot longer than that. Now this, I have to tell you, full disclosure, this is just what works best for me. So I'm not saying it'll work best for you. I'm not even saying it's the best one out there for me, but right now, today, this is what works best. So here it is. Sometime between 4 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. is when I wake up, and I normally have a large glass of water or some kind of light meal or pre-workout snack, because the next thing, which comes up at 5 a.m., is the workout. The workout typically lasts for 60 minutes and is done through a combination of weight training and also maybe a little bit of cardio at the end. It is always done with some kind of audiobook or some kind of audible learning product so that I can take in information as I'm going through my workout. At 6 a.m. when the workout is done, it is breakfast time. Get the kids up, feed them, play with them for a little bit, and then at 7 a.m., time to shower, get ready, and get set for work. At 7:30 a.m., I head to work, and this is when I start my official morning routine with 10 minutes of meditation and then 50 to 60 minutes of active studying. Active studying is typically some kind of reading or study or working with a coach or mentor or going through drills or exercises, something to better my knowledge, my understanding, and my skills on business and marketing and personal development. At 8:30 a.m., I get right to work on my MIT, which is my most important task. This is something that I learned years ago from Brian Tracy through his book, Eat That Frog, which is all about doing your most hard and difficult task first and getting it out of the way. This is huge for me, so I make sure that I schedule a solid 3 hours of time to work on my most important tasks from 8:30 a.m. right up till 11:30 a.m. At 11:30 a.m., well, now it's time for emails and administrative stuff and talking with the team and making sure everybody else has what they need from me. At 12 o'clock, it is now lunchtime, and then the morning is over. Now, when looking at my routine and looking at some of the other people's routines that we've talked about here, you'll notice a few common themes. Number one, waking up really early. 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m., maybe 5 a.m. in some cases, but for the most part, it's pretty early. The second thing is you'll notice some kind of hard physical work, a workout, whether it's weights or whether it's cardio, and this is typically done right upon waking or within 30 to 60 minutes after it. You'll also see some kind of learning or studying or reading or input of valuable and helpful information. I think equally important here, however, are not just the things that you do see, but also the things that you don't see in these high performers' morning rituals. These are things like checking email too early, or logging onto social media, or watching the news, or anything like that. And that's why the takeaway point that I'd like to give you from my morning ritual is, if you want to have a 1% life, you need to make 1% sacrifices. All right, so now that you've got your morning ritual dialed in, the next piece of the puzzle is to check out the video right here on 10 signs you're going to be successful. So check that out now, and I'll see you in the next episode. What if there was a way to predict your success before it happened, so you could plan for it, stack the odds in your favor, and really make sure that you're on the right track? Well, there is, which is why in this video I'm going to share with you